This is an informational session on the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund's Rapid Response Window on women's participation in peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements. It focuses on the direct support stream, supporting women's meaningful participation in Track 1 and Track 2 peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements. And this recorded session will provide a brief background to the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund and to the establishment of the Rapid Response Window. And it then focuses on the direct support stream, going through who can apply, how to apply, and the evaluation criteria used to assess proposals. And it then goes through the two application documents associated with the direct support stream, the call for proposals and the proposal template, both of which are available to download on the WPHF website. So about the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, it's a pooled funding mechanism and a partnership between UN agencies, member states, and civil society. It funds only local grassroots civil society organizations in conflict, post-conflict, and humanitarian settings, with an average size of grants between $5,000 and $300,000 US, and it works across the following 6 pillars. Outcome 1, an enabling environment for women, peace, and security. Outcome 2, conflict prevention. Outcome 3, humanitarian and crisis response. Outcome 4, conflict resolution, and this is the area that the Rapid Response Window focuses on. Outcome 5, the protection of women and girls. And Outcome 6, peace building and recovery. The governance structure of WPHF is as follows. It has a global funding board made up of 4 UN agencies, 4 civil society organizations, and 4 member states. Decisions at the national level are made by national steering committees. The Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office acts as the administrative agent for the fund, and UN Women hosts the fund's secretariat. WPHF works through the following funding mechanisms. Since its establishment in 2016, the regular funding cycle provides mid to long-term support to civil society organizations across all 6 WPHF outcomes. And the regular funding cycle also includes the window on forced displacement. In April 2020, WPHF opened the COVID-19 emergency response window, which provided institutional support under Outcome 1, an enabling environment for women, peace and security, and programmatic support under Outcome 3, humanitarian and crisis response. And the window we're focusing on today, open for applications since September 2020, is the Rapid Response Window on women's participation in peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements, which focuses on Area 4, conflict resolution. And this was opened in September 2020, but was formally launched in January 2021. And this is the allocation of the funding mechanisms. So the regular funding cycle makes up 82% of the allocation, the COVID-19 emergency response window 12%, and the rapid response window on women's participation in peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements makes up 6%. So you can see it's a very specific and targeted window focusing on women's participation in formal peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements, and removing the logistical and technical barriers that prevent women from accessing and influencing those conflict resolution mechanisms. And this is being recorded in February 2021. So the allocations may change in the future. So for some background on the Rapid Response Window. In 2019, the UN Secretary General Report on Women, Peace and Security called for the international community to support rapid response funds to advance the meaningful participation of women in formal peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements. And this should include financial support for logistical barriers such as travel costs, visas, childcare, translation services, and other related expenses. And the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund was called upon to open up the rapid response window in support of that. And it's really important here to emphasize the logistical nature of the support. So this is about urgent interventions that remove logistical barriers that prevent women from accessing and participating formal peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements. The Rapid Response Window was established through a participatory design phase made up of consultations with civil society stakeholders, UN agencies, women peace builders and women mediators. And this is to ensure its relevance and its complementarity with other existing funds. And as said before, it focuses on Outcome 4 on conflict resolution, which is the increased representation and leadership of women in formal peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements. More information on the direct support stream is that it addresses urgent service gaps specific to women's participation in a formal peace process taking place at the international, national, or subnational level, and this includes the implementation of a peace agreement. It provides flexible logistical support, for example, to cover the costs of travel, visas, translation services, including the translation of key documents or simultaneous interpretation, daily subsistence allowance, access for persons living with disabilities, and childcare. And the WPHF Rapid Response Window covers the cost by purchasing and arranging the service that the civil society organisation will use to enable or facilitate women's influence and participation. And this can also be provided through expert technical support provided by a consultant, for example, in gathering data and providing an evidence base, in holding consultations, in providing advocacy and campaign support, and other expert advisory services, including preparatory sessions or workshops for women planning to attend a formal peace negotiation. So the type of support is not a grant for a civil society organisation to implement a project. Rather, the civil society organisation requests that WPHF covers the cost of a service that it requires in order to enable or facilitate women's access and influence in a formal peace process or the implementation of a peace agreement. The limit for the estimated cost of services is $25,000 US. So the service cost that would be requested by the civil society organisation cannot exceed that amount. And as said before, projects that require grants are not eligible in this stream, the direct support stream. So civil society applicants request a service and they do not receive funding for a grant. If successful, the applicant receives or benefits from that service. Who can apply? It's open to all official development assistance eligible countries with a Track 1 or Track 2 peace process or implementing a peace agreement. We do not require the legal registration of civil society organisations under the direct support stream, and this is because the organisation does not receive a grant. It receives the service, so it does not itself handle the funding, but rather it receives the service as the form of support. Local and national civil society organisations can apply who require urgent support for women's participation and influence in a Track 1 or Track 2 peace process or the implementation of a peace agreement, and women-led organisations are particularly encouraged to apply. And the application materials are available in 5 languages, and we accept applications in all 5: Arabic, English, French, Spanish, and Russian. When to apply? There is no deadline for proposals. The rapid response window accepts applications on a rolling basis in order to ensure that it is demand-driven and context-specific. So an organisation applies when a peace process or the implementation of a peace agreement has a gap resulting in women's exclusion from meaningful participation in the decision-making. And the civil society organisation applies to the rapid response window to address that logistical or technical gap. There is no minimum duration for services or activities to ensure that we can provide a wide range of support, including immediate logistical support. And the maximum duration for an initiative is 6 months. And this is where to find the application documents. You go to www.wphfund.org. Under the funding dropdown on the right-hand side, the rapid response window is the second option. And if you click on that, you're taken to this page where you'll see you're able to select between the 5 languages at the top of the page. And as you scroll down the page, you will find the application materials available to download. And that's the call for proposals, which is guidelines for preparing your application, and the application package, which you'll email to WPHF-RRW@unwomen.org. And that email address is available on the website, and it's in both documents that are available to download. So now we're going to go through the application documents. This is the call for proposals for the direct support stream. So section 1 gives introduction to the context, which is that women's meaningful participation in formal peace processes remains one of the most stalled areas in the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and the rapid response window aims to address that. Section 2 is about the rapid response window, which we've already gone through. Section 3. This call for proposals is for direct support only, meaning that the rapid response window directly funds a service to contribute to or facilitate women's participation in a formal peace process or the implementation of a peace agreement. And it does this by covering the costs for logistical support and/or technical consultancy services. And an organization requests the direct support because it has identified a service gap specific to a peace process and can benefit from a punctual intervention to address the gap to ensure women's meaningful participation. WPHF pays for the cost of the service directly, so the applicant does not receive funding. The applicant does not receive a grant. The process looks like this. We receive and approve a request from a civil society organization. We arrange and purchase the required service. The civil society organization receives and/or makes use of that service in order that women's influence and/or participation is enabled. So for example, WPHF would cover the cost of travel by paying the travel service provider directly, or would cover the cost of translation needs by paying the translator directly, and the civil society organization benefits from the service provided. So some examples of the types of requests and initiatives could include, but are not limited to, travel and other logistical support, and then a range of expertise and technical support, for example, in identifying entry points, in the coaching of women delegates and observers, in advocacy and lobbying campaigns, in translation support, evidence-based advocacy and collection of data, preparatory sessions, consultations and community engagement, other capacity building, coalition building and strategizing, advocacy events, and organizing and drafting participatory declarations or demands to influence decision-making processes. Section 4 explains the eligibility, application, and selection process. So funding support under the rapid response window is open to all ODA eligible countries that have a track 1 or a track 2 peace process. So these are peace processes taking place at the formal level or the high level, or the implementation of a peace agreement. And the rapid response window is open beyond the countries that are eligible for WPHF's regular funding cycle, which are found on the website. On the duration of service, we can support services up to 6 months maximum, and initiatives that require funding may be as short as just a few days, for example, for some logistical support costs. And initiatives under the rapid response window should be short in duration, aiming to address rapidly a specific gap with an identified impact-specific action. And longer-term initiatives or projects are supported through WPHF's regular funding stream for eligible countries, again to be found on the website. On the applicants or organization type, local and national civil society organizations are invited to submit a request for support, including coalitions of civil society organizations. So we do accept proposals from coalitions or networks. Women-led organizations are especially encouraged to apply, and the proof of legal registration or legal status is not required for the direct support stream, since the civil society organization does not receive a grant or funding, but instead receives a service that WPHF purchases on its behalf. And members of a women mediator network can submit requests for travel support if directly advising and supporting a civil society organization on a specific process. On current and previous WPHF grantees, since the direct support stream does not mean that the civil society organization receives a grant, previous grantees and current grantees of the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund are invited to apply to the rapid response window for the direct support stream. The application should take a participatory and inclusive approach, so it should be able to demonstrate how women will include and feedback key demands from women of diverse backgrounds. the level, track and type of peace process, the rapid response window is open to initiatives aimed at all types of formal peace processes at the track 1 and track 2 level, including ceasefires, constitutional committees, political dialogues, peace negotiations, and formal peace agreement implementation and its monitoring mechanisms at the national, subnational, and international levels. And the proposal should clearly name the process or event that it is targeting. Please refer to section 2 above for more information on the types of processes that this could include. The initiative could take place at any of the following stages. It could take place before a peace negotiation during the preparation and design phase, for example, to inform the agenda of the peace negotiation. It could take place during a peace negotiation, for example, ensuring that there are gender provisions in the outcomes of the peace agreement, or that women are able to input and influence the provisions of the peace agreement. And it can take place after a peace negotiation, so in the implementation and monitoring stage of a peace agreement. The proposal should be aligned to Area 4 on conflict resolution, and this is the representation and leadership of women is increased in formal peace processes and/or the implementation of peace agreements. And this will be the given impact statement of your proposed intervention. So this is clearly outlined in the proposal template, and you will develop your own outcome and describe the activity that you will use to reach that outcome to have this impact. So your proposal should address the barriers to women's participation in the peace process or the peace agreement that your proposal is targeting. The maximum estimated cost of services cannot exceed $25,000, and there is no minimum request. And we do not ask for an organization to present a detailed budget, since the direct support stream means that the organization accesses services rather than funding for a project. On when, where, and how to apply. We will host online webinars for prospective applicants on a rolling basis, and you can register using a link on our website, www.wphfund.org/RRW for rapid response window. There is no deadline for submissions. Applications are received on a rolling basis as the needs and opportunities arise. Application documents should be submitted as a Word document or in a PDF format. No other formats are accepted. We accept applications in 5 languages: Arabic, English, French, Spanish, and Russian. The application package should be emailed to WPHF-RRW@unwomen.org, and you will receive receipt of application through a confirmation email. And if you do not receive that confirmation email within 2 working days, please contact WPHF using that same email address. And we will do our best to respond to you as quickly as possible. And please do check the junk inbox in your email to make sure that the confirmation email hasn't gone there instead. Only shortlisted applications are contacted for next steps. So if you do not hear beyond the confirmation email from the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, it means that the application has not been shortlisted and will not be proceeding further through the evaluation process. And you may not make changes to your application after it is submitted, but you may submit again if you have not heard, and you can assume that your application has not been shortlisted and another gap or opportunity to address the gap arises, you are welcome to apply again. This is the checklist for the components of the application package. You must send a fully completed proposal template, and the link to the proposal template is below, and we will go through that document in just a moment. And if your organization has valid legal registration or legal status, please do provide that, but only if your organization is legally registered. And this is not a requirement for the direct support stream of the rapid response window. And if you are applying as a consortium or a coalition, please provide the details of the lead organization if it is legally registered. And you should not submit photos or additional documents to the ones listed here. So we do not accept photos or any other additional documents, and this is often because the file size creates problems for us to open in the email. So please just send the proposal template and, if relevant, proof of valid legal registration or status. As you write your application, keep in mind that the proposals will be evaluated against the following criteria. So this is the most important part of this document to bear in mind to ensure that your proposal is meeting the following criteria and can be assessed for shortlisting under the Rapid Response Window direct support stream. So the intervention activity and its objectives should be aligned with outcome 4 or the Rapid Response Window's objective to support women's participation in peace processes and the implementation of peace agreements. It should be timely and relevant to the targeted formal peace process or peace agreement. So you should be able to demonstrate why an intervention in the time frame that you are requesting is important and why it is particularly relevant in that moment. Your application should include the consideration of measures to protect women human rights defenders and women peace builders participating in this initiative. And this is to respond to the increasing targeted threats that women human rights defenders and women peace builders are facing. And this comes under the risk and mitigation section of the proposal template, but can also be covered in the details of your intervention. And your intervention should have a participatory approach that is inclusive of diverse groups of women and other stakeholders. On the estimated cost of services, the proposal should fall within the funding limits of the call for proposals, and the estimated cost of services should be sufficient and reasonable for the activities proposed and should take the scale of problems into account. And as a reminder, the funding limit is $25,000 US, and this is for an estimated cost of services. This is not a budget to implement a project. Section 6 of the call for proposals provides some useful resources, and Section 7 gives more information about the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, which we have gone through today. So now to go through the application document. This is the proposal template. So Section 1 is the cover page of your application, and you should fill in each of these sections. The organization name or lead organization name if applying as a consortium, information on how to contact you, the country and region, implementing partners if relevant. Here you would select all that would apply to your type of organization. So for example, a women's rights organization that is also women-led would check these 2 boxes. You must fill in this section, the estimated cost of services requested. And a more detailed breakdown of this is provided at the end of the proposal template in Annex A, but it should be filled in here, the total, so that it's easy to do an initial assessment of the proposal. You should provide a proposed start date, end date, and a total duration in days, noting that the direct support stream only supports initiatives for up to 6 months and that there is no minimum duration, so it can be as short as just a few days. And here you should identify whether you are targeting a track 1 process, a track 2 process, or the implementation of a peace agreement. We want to learn how you heard about the WPHF Rapid Response Window. So you can choose between various options here, and if it is none of those, you can provide a brief explanation in the box below. And Section 3 asks you to give a summary of your proposal. So in the first box, you'll provide a proposal title, then the location of where your intervention will be taking place, and you can be as specific as possible here. Then we ask you to name the peace process or the peace agreement that you are targeting. So for example, the specific peace negotiation or political dialogue or constitutional committee or council for peace, or the name of the peace agreement, including its year. For example, a 2009 peace agreement or a 2005 agreement, and so on. Here we ask you to identify the track and the type of peace process or agreement. So this can be track 1 or track 2, with an explanation provided in the footnote. So track 1 is a high-level negotiation involving country leadership or governments, often led by the UN or multilateral regional organizations. And track 2 is a dialogue or problem-solving workshop involving leading figures in society, often led by mediators or NGOs, including international NGOs. You should also identify the type of peace process or peace agreement. So for example, a Track 1 ceasefire process. We then ask you to check the box that is most relevant for the level of the peace process or agreement that is taking place. For example, the subnational level, the national level, or the international level. Under type of direct support, you can select up to 3 options relevant to this application, and this will identify the service that you are requesting in your proposal that the rapid response window will finance directly. So the cost for the logistical service and or the technical service. So here are a set of logistical costs that your application may request. And if it's other, you can provide more of an explanation here. Or it could be a technical cost. So to cover the cost of a service that is provided by a consultant, with a list of the type of support that is provided here. And if it's other technical support, you can provide an explanation below. You should specify the targeted beneficiary group and the estimated reach. So the targeted beneficiaries and estimated number of direct beneficiaries should be on the left, and the number of local or women's organizations that will be engaged on the right. And please also indicate if you are planning to work with any of the following groups in order to demonstrate that it is a participatory and inclusive approach. So for example, internally displaced persons, Indigenous persons, young persons, refugees, persons living with disabilities, LGBTIQ2+ persons, and then there are blank spaces here for you to fill in further categories as relevant to your context and your application. Under section 4, we ask you to provide a context and situation analysis, and this can be quite brief, and it should outline the conflict or post-conflict context in which your organization is operating, and it should outline the barrier or barriers to women's meaningful participation, especially those barriers that you are specifically targeting in this application. Section 5 is where you will outline your proposed intervention and the expected result. So in narrative form, you should describe the proposed intervention, including the expected outcome it aims to achieve. And you should outline how direct support from the rapid response window will enable you to achieve that outcome. So what service are you requesting from the rapid response window, and how will the use of that service enable or facilitate women's participation based on your proposal? And the outcome should be aligned with the call for proposals and should address the barriers to women's meaningful participation that you have identified in section 4 above, the context and situation analysis. The impact statement that the outcome will contribute to is provided in the box below. So the impact statement is that the representation and leadership of women is increased in formal peace negotiations and or the implementation of peace agreements. And your proposal must include details on the following areas: on its participatory and inclusive approach, including how your organization will include and or feedback demands from women of different backgrounds, the specific decision-making process or event that you are aiming to influence, the level and track of the targeted peace process or peace agreement, and the stage at which the service provision will take place. So for example, are you requesting a service before a peace process, perhaps a technical service in the form of a preparatory session? Is it during a peace process where you're asking the service to cover travel costs? Or is it after a peace process where you're asking for a service to ensure women's meaningful participation in the monitoring and implementation of a peace agreement? So in the box below, you have the impact statement provided for you. The outcome is free for you to develop based on your proposal and the context you are working in. And then you will give the details on the proposed intervention, and what service you are requesting, and how that service will facilitate or enable women's participation. In section 6, we ask you to provide any previous experience relevant to this application. So here you can provide an overview of past initiatives on women's participation in peace processes and or the implementation of peace agreements that your organization has led or has contributed to. This could be, for example, reports that your organization has authored or key projects that your organization has participated in or implemented. And please do include details on the impact, on the documented evidence, lessons, and good practices to explain how your organization or your coalition of organizations is well placed to achieve results. In section 7, we ask you to outline previous or existing financial support that is relevant to this application, and you can leave this section blank if there is no previous or existing financial support relevant to this application. But this is where you can outline any financial support that you are receiving for activities that are related to the peace or political process targeted in this application. So you should provide information on the timeline of the support provided, the total amount of support provided, and the type of organisation that is providing support if possible. In section 8, we ask you to outline the risks and mitigation measures. So using this table, you will identify the risk level. Is it very high, high, medium, or low? And you will highlight what measures you will take to mitigate the outlined risk. And then in the blank areas beneath, and you should add rows as needed, you should list additional risks that will impact the achievement of results and of carrying out the planned activities. And these risks could include programmatic, operational, or contextual risks. And for each risk, highlight the risk level and what measures you will take to mitigate that risk from impacting the achievement of your project. And in Annex A, you'll provide the estimated cost of services. So this takes the form of the UNDG budget categories, but this is, as a reminder, this is not a budget for a grant for the implementation of a project. And there are 4 budget lines here that are open for you to complete. Section 2 on supplies, commodities and materials, 3 on equipment, vehicles and furniture, 4 on contractual services, and 5 on travel. And this is because the organisation is not receiving a grant, so staff and other personnel costs will not be a relevant cost to be covered under the direct support stream, nor will transfers and grants to counterparts, and nor will general operating expenses and other direct costs. And you can just use one line. You do not have to use all 4. So this should be clearly linked to section 5, where you will outline your proposed intervention. And if it is only travel that you're requesting, then you only need to fill in the line on travel and the total will be the same. Or if you are requesting a contractual service and travel, then it would be 2 lines and the total will be the total of those 2 lines. And when your application is completed, please do read through and check again to make sure that you have filled in every section and that you have checked your proposal against the evaluation criteria that are provided in the call for proposals. And then you would send your application as a Word document or as a PDF to the email address that was provided in the call for proposals, which is WPHF-RRW@unwomen.org. So I will show you that email address again. Here are the evaluation criteria. Application packages should be emailed to WPHF-RRW@unwomen.org. And any further questions on the direct support stream of the rapid response window can also be emailed there, and we will do our best to get back to you. Thank you very much.